We held off the 1-7:39 kick because of this guy who's coming in. Timing was impeccable as always. So Jason's dropping by. And we're going to talk about Atlanta United and CF Montreal. Welcome, sir.
What's up?
It's been a busy morning. We had Michael Parkhurst on this morning, catching up with our friends at Beyond Goals. And a lot of folks in the Twitch pitch have been talking about the events of the last couple of days. I know that you were up at the Children's Healthcare of Atlanta training ground to hear Gonzalo Pineda and Carlos Bocanegra speak yesterday. What were some of your takeaways?
Yeah, look, you don't want to lose players who are good players. And I think Andrew Gutman and Franco Ibarra are both good players. But when you get into the MLS machinations of making a team better, and I think Carlos said it yesterday very clearly, it's not the first time, the way the league's structured, the way a salary cap is structured, the way a roster is structured in this league, it's not the Premier League. It's not other leagues in the world where you can keep good players and still try to get better by adding other good players. It's not feasible in MLS for multiple reasons. You run out of roster spots, number one. It's not Chelsea where you can sign, 5 deep in every position, which can be good or bad, but you can't do that. 2, if you're going to add good players, and Tristan Muyumba hopefully will be a good player in this midfield, an area that all I've heard all season and argued about is that that's an area that needs to be upgraded. Okay. You go out and you bring in Muyumba, and hopefully he'll be able to join sooner rather than later. Because of the way the league is structured, you can't just add. You can't. It's literally impossible, because if you can, then that means you either were keeping roster spots open or were not spending to the max of the cap. It's just math. I'm sorry. It's just math. And when you look to make the team better in these situations where you have limited space and you have limited spend, when you look to get better, you have to move guys out, but you look to positions where you have depth. Left back, full back in general, a position you have depth, and a player who is of value in the league, and Andrew Gutman, who I think will serve Colorado well. And I think here, 2 things, with what you have cover on the left side with Caleb Wiley, with Ronald Hernandez, who can play on either side, with Aiden McFadden, who can play on either side, you've got the depth you need in that position. And 2, with what we've seen in the last match, playing wing backs as opposed to full backs, you've got even more depth because you have even more options. With a wing back, you can play a winger and that kind of a role like we saw Justin Merrim do in 2019. So that's one. When it comes to Gutman, that's a player of value, and I think you got good value for him in the trade. And it's at a position where you can afford to lose somebody to get better elsewhere. And then in the midfield, when you're going to add another midfielder, which, again, I will say it again, and it's a position that everybody has talked about all year long, and I didn't think it was the biggest priority, but it's a position that everybody has talked about wanting to improve. Okay, so you improve it. And then when you start to figure out who has to go to make room and to make space, it's easy to say on the outside, we'll just move the guy who's not playing. You can't buy a contract out because you bought Joseph Martinez's contract out in a way to help him get to Miami where he wanted to go. You did the buyout then. You didn't trade him. You didn't hold on to him. You did the buyout so he could choose where he wanted to go there on a cap-friendly deal. He went there. Okay. So you can't do that. You can't just cut somebody. It's not the way the league's structured. So you have to find somebody of value. And you're looking to get a return because then you can get even better. So, look, it sucks. In a perfect world, that's not even a perfect world, honestly, because I don't think Chelsea's a perfect world in being able to just go and spend and add a player and add a player and add a player and add a player. Because then you have guys who aren't playing, and then you have situations where you have too many guys to even do normal training sessions. and you have guys who are unhappy because they're not playing. That factors in too. So look, like, it sucks. I wish it was easier to upgrade your team. But in MLS, and I think there are more benefits to it than these issues, which suck. There's more benefits to having a cap and roster space and those things because you have a more competitive league than a league where somebody can just go and spend and spend and spend and spend and spend their way out of trouble. So, look, it's not a fun situation when you lose two players who I think are good players in this league, two players who played hard for the club, two players who were well liked in the locker room. But if your goal is to win, and that's what everyone demands, and that's what they should demand, well, when you try to upgrade, that means you can't just purely upgrade. You have to move some things out to bring in pieces to the team. And that's the nature of it. And we've been down this road before. This is not new. So I think the overreaction to it is what it is. It's an overreaction to it. You have to see how the whole window shakes out. And I was having this conversation with somebody yesterday offline. Compared to the Atlanta Hawks right now, the Atlanta Hawks in a cap league, you can actually understand the cap in the NBA, so that's a bonus. Mm-hmm. Even if it is very, very complicated, you can understand it, and it's public and everything's out there, which I wish MLS was. But in the NBA, it's the same thing. You got to move guys out to get better because you run up against the limit of your spend and you run up against the limit of your roster. Hawks send John Collins away. That trade doesn't look good by itself, does it? Because you're sending a good player away and you're not getting anything back. But what does that do? It sets you up for other things. And you can right or wrong on the other things you do. That's not the point of this. You have to make moves that might not look great by themselves. But in a cap league, one move has to trigger another. And sometimes it's the outgoing first before the incoming. Sometimes you hear about the incoming and then you see the outgoing later. And that's just the nature of it. And that's where you are right now. So at the moment, again, I think with the left back situation, you're covered. With central midfield, you were going to miss Ibarra this weekend anyway. We were going to have that conversation about who plays. Is it Osechiu? Is it Sosa? Is it Alonso? Well, now you're going to have that conversation until Muyumba is in the mix. And then where does he fit in and who does he play with is going to be the question. And I think something that Gonzalo Pineda will figure out once he gets him into training and gets to see the chemistry and the fit. Sorry, that was a very long answer to that, but I don't know how else to explain it. Like, I truly don't. Like, it's complicated. It's a lot, but you can't just stomp your feet and say, I want it now, because in this league, if you want something, you got to give something up, period. And we know that. So that's where it is.
Yeah, you can't be Veruca Salt in this situation and try to work your way forward. Let's go backward before we go forward. Let's go. First time that I've had the chance to catch up with you since the match against Philly. Now that you've had a little while to let that one just kind of ruminate a little bit and digest, your thoughts about the win against Philly.
Good win, good performance, and I think what was the best about it was the defensive solidity. And I wasn't sure going in if adding the half center back, half fullback, and Ronald Hernandez would make it work. And it did help. It absolutely helped. Ronald Hernandez is a really good 1v1 defender. I think he's going to play an important role down the stretch, whether it's playing as a fullback, whether it's playing as a third center back. You're also going to get Miles Robinson back, so you have the ability to play three center backs in Abram, Parata, and Robinson when Miles comes back into the group. So you're going to have a lot of flexibility with how you shape things out. But I thought it was really good. The scrappiness is something that's hard to quantify. I think blocks is one way you can do that, and they had more blocks in this one than they've had all season. It was a really good performance. You get the early goal, which is key against against a Red Bulls team. Teams that don't want the ball, the earlier you can score on them, the more they're uncomfortable. And I didn't think Philly looked very good at all. I think Jim Curtin maybe overthought it a little bit with his half central midfielder, half wingback in Leon Flock. Like the graphic had it as a 5-3-2. They've played in that shape this season. It was kind of half and half, and I don't know why, but it was also for a very short period of time because after the goal, it looked more like the 4-4-2 diamond, and I thought it played more like the 4-4-2 diamond. And Atlanta with that box midfield, the other element of it that was so impressive to me was having four in the midfield, which we've seen. We saw in the game against NYC. It's what led them back. Firmino playing as that kind of additional 10, the mix player where you're kind of a forward, kind of a 10, kind of an 8, kind of a winger. Chol played that in the first half. Didn't have a good second half. Wolf replaces him. I thought Chol understood what the role needed to be. It didn't fully click with him and his teammates. I thought there were a couple passes that were late to him, like a step behind him. Then he was late to make a run on one really good ball from Almada through the middle. It was close, but I thought his movement opened up a lot of space. It opened up a lot of space for Lennon. It created a lot of opportunities there. So I liked it, and I think the more that you see them play in that way, the more that can come from it. But I like what you saw, and I think you'll see that kind of a shape, which it's just like a little shift in terms of the lines. I think you'll see that again this weekend against Montreal.
When you talk about Montreal and Hernan Losada, what has study hall been like for you getting ready for this matchup there at Stade Saputo?
They're missing a lot of key pieces. Missing Matthew Chouanier is a big loss for them. He's a player that you might not know all that well. He's an all-star, and I'm really happy to see him get picked. He was a guy who played as a wing-back when Georgi Mihailovic was there. He's not a wing-back, but he actually did pretty well at that position. I think he's a central midfielder. He's an 8/10. Really good player. And he's out. Kyoto's out. Lapalainen's out. Broguiard, Herrera away on Gold Cup duty. That's 5 key players, maybe 5 starters. So it's a little difficult. But this is a Montreal team at home that's been very good. And Losada's style of play is disruptive. It's different than Philly and Red Bulls because he wants the ball. But it's disruptive with their press. They're very good at it. And they're going to play in a 3-5-2, 5-3-2 kind of setup. It's not the 4-man midfield. It's more of a 3 with 2 up top. Toy and Ibrahim were the 2 starters in the last game against NYC, with Bryce Duke, who's another really good fit for them, playing as that 10. I think when they get Duke and Chouanier playing together on a regular basis, they're going to be really good in that midfield. Wanyama is still one of the better central midfielders in this league in a holding role. I like their center backs, Waterman, Camacho, Corbo. I think they're all good. They suit the system. Sirois, good young goalkeeper. Wing back is where I think Atlanta United can win some battles. I like Brooks Lennon and Caleb Wiley against their wing backs. Ariel Lassiter, who's an attacker, has played wing back for them. Defensively, it's going to be a liability. Sean Rea, better defensively, but yeah, you can get at those 2 guys with your attacking wingbacks in Lennon and Wiley, and I think that's where the game will turn. If Lennon and Wiley have big days, Atlanta United should win this game. If Montreal's able to deny that and create some opportunities with their pressure, Montreal can win this game. So I think it's going to be a really fun one. I think it's going to be a high-energy game. I think for neutrals, they'll really enjoy it. I think for fans, you might be a little stressed out because it's going to be a very tight game. But I think wing back is where the game's decided. I think Lennon and Wiley are the 2 who can win it for Atlanta.
Can we talk the Poku trade really quickly?
Yeah, he might be in the mix. Losada spoke to the media yesterday and didn't really know if he's going to be there or not. I think Opoku is in Montreal now, but one thing that Losada mentioned, and I don't know the situation here in terms of players going from the U.S. to Canada and work visas and those situations. I don't know if Opoku can play this weekend. I don't know if he'll have the necessary paperwork to be an employee in Canada. I'm not sure on that. I don't know what the process is. I don't know how different it is. I'm assuming it doesn't just transfer from the U.S. So I don't know that part of it, but if he got there yesterday, he'd have a walkthrough training session today, and I don't think you'd expect him to start. if he's available off the bench, he's a good addition for them. Obviously, they paid a lot for him, which I feel like is a big risk, but he's an upgrade. Sanusi Ibrahim, still young, but he hasn't really broken through yet for them at 20 years old yet. Mason Toy has had injury issues. I think he's talented, but we haven't seen consistency from Toy. They need a real number 9. A 4 has 3 goals this season. I mean, that's 3 guys in Toy, Ibrahim, and a 4 who are all like potential guys, and none of them have been the guy. And Opoku last year was the guy. He was really good. This year, not at the same level. Can he go there and reunite with Bryce Duke? Remember, they both came to LAFC together. Can those two form a connection? Can Schwanier start to find it? And then do you get a situation where Montreal changes a little bit from the 3-4-1-2 to more of the 3-4-2-1 with Duke and Schwanier behind Opoku? I like that fit for them, and I think it could be a really good move. And honestly, for Atlanta United's sake, and in this one anyway, I think it's a good thing that he probably won't factor in very much, if at all.
Get it done now instead of when he gets integrated.
Hey, they're going to come down to the Bends later this year, and they'll be better at that point. But then you bring up the question, and we saw it with Losada's team at DC, and I think we see it with managers who play in the style. Bielsa had it at Leeds. Teams run out of gas. And when you play that hard-charging pressing style and you play under intensity for a long period of time, it's really tough to stay fully charged. And Montreal really hasn't played a whole lot of guys. So how Losada manages that will be key in the second half of the season. I think he's punched above his weight. I think their record is better than their talent. And that's the sign of a manager who is a good coach. Now can he be a good manager in dealing with these kinds of things? Opoku's going to give him another weapon. Getting guys back healthy will give him more weapons. These are really good things. But right now, Montreal's a little vulnerable. And I think Atlanta has to take advantage. They have to attack those wingbacks, and they have to open things up tomorrow.
2 more questions, and,
Yep.
and thanks for dropping by, because I know that you got to kind of get ready to hit the road too. Other matches that you're looking at this weekend, since we're in the Whiparound, what other matches are you looking at this weekend in Major League Soccer?
Been so focused on everything with this. Let's take a look and see what jumps out to me. Charlotte hosting Cincinnati. I mean, Charlotte had 3 points in the bag on Wednesday and couldn't see it out. They're missing a couple of things right now, and playing on short rest, hosting Cincinnati, and disappointment added into the short rest. Road team in that one looks pretty good. DC and Miami. Miami, I mean, you have to keep looking at them to see what they're going to do over this stretch right now where they're missing guys to the Gold Cup, but they've got to get something out of these games to have any shot of getting to the playoffs when they get all the big guns in. It sounds like Jordi Alba is going to be the next one on a TAM deal. You got to get some points here. I don't know if they're capable of pulling that off. Chicago and Nashville, interesting. Houston and Kansas City might be a sneaky good game out west. RSL and Orlando, it's a really good test for Orlando, who has been really good as of late on the road in Utah. That's a long trip for them. Curious to see how they look. And LA Galaxy and Philadelphia. I mean, Philadelphia has been better than LAFC in terms of dealing with CONCACAF Champions League and all that, but they didn't look great on Sunday. They didn't honestly look great when they beat Miami at home. It was a lopsided scoreline, but they didn't look great in that. And now they go to face an LA Galaxy team that is on shorter rest by a couple of days, but you talk about a team with maybe some momentum after playing in front of 80,000 and getting that kind of a win. I like the Galaxy in that one. I actually do.
All right. One last question. MLS Next Pro. The Twos had the week off, and they, for the reward of their off week, they get Crown Legacy at Matthews this weekend.
Yeah, but they're rested going into it. And I know the guys, a lot of them got away for a few days, which is good. They've had a lot of work since returning, I think, late last week or over the weekend. So I like that they had their break. I like that they ended before the break on a big win. And you've got somebody in Nick Firmino who is just in incredible form. And can he pick up where he left off? Getting Johnny Viall back and healthier now, can he start potentially? Adds another wrinkle to that. But Crown Legacy is a fascinating team to me when you look at Next Pro and how teams are built. They're a little older. They've got some guys who honestly I think would help the first team right now. I think Charlotte needs a left back in the worst way. They're playing right backs on the left side, which can work. But then you're also playing Derek Jones as a center back. Maybe you need him in the midfield right now. Crown Legacy's got players who are a little bit older and could step up and help. And I'm a little surprised we haven't seen that. So compare the teams, and Crown Legacy has more experience. I think they've really invested in that team almost to be more of a link to the first team than an Atlanta United 2 team is, where it's more of a extension of the academy, if that makes sense. Yeah. Like, I think sometimes you can build a reserve team to be like a true reserve team, but then use them that way and use those guys in the first team and bring them through. And I think Charlotte needs to do that. I don't think they're going to this week, so it shouldn't affect Atlanta United 2's match with them. It's a good team, and they play a really interesting tactical setup. It's very fluid. Guys are not like rigidly in positions. It's going to be a fascinating one Sunday night. I'm really looking forward to it.
Broadcast plans across the board. Sir, hit the promo for me.
So, Saturday night, 7 o'clock, Five Stripes Countdown on 92.9 The Game and the Odyssey app. Kickoff, 7:39. And then we will have a normal full-time report from Stade Saputo, so close to an hour after the final whistle. We're going to try to figure out the technology. Stade Saputo is not the biggest of stadiums, but we're going to try to get at least some of Gonzalo Pineda's press conference. I know that's something we haven't really been able to do on the road. We're going to try to make that happen for you guys this time so you can hear some of his comments after the game. And then we'll be heading back. And Sunday here on the SDH Network, we will have Atlanta United 2 and Crown Legacy on the road. It's going to be a busy weekend.
No doubt about it. Always is this time of year. Jason, thanks a lot, and we'll catch up with you soon, my friend.
Adios.